Welcome to the King of the Court podcast with Ben Riggs and Ben Staten.
All right, welcome to the King of the Court podcast. I'm Ben Riggs. This is Ben Staten.
Yo.
We got a fun show for you today. We're going to, the Lakers have really been on the skids lately. We're going to jump into that first, that sort of long protracted discussion. I do want listeners to know that as we get through the Lakers section of this podcast, the meat and potatoes of today's show is going to be a preview of the NBA Cup quarterfinals coming up next week. I think we really do have some exciting games in the NBA Cup quarterfinals. We've got the Mavs versus the Thunder. We're going to do a really in-depth preview of that. We're going to go player by player, sort of break down not just the player comparisons, but the style of play and how those teams match up against each other. Then we're going to preview Golden State versus Houston. Another potentially exciting matchup. I think we both think that there's a little more leeway in that one for it to be less exciting. And then over in the Eastern Conference, there's two really good matchups. The bane of Ben Staten's existence, the Atlanta Hawks will be matching up against the New York Knicks.
Fuck the Hawks, man. That's all I'm gonna say.
And he'll explain why later. So hang around if you want to hear why Ben Staten wakes up every morning and puts a voodoo curse on the Atlanta Hawks. And then we're also going to have an interesting matchup between the Fighting Franz Wagners of Orlando, the Orlando Magic versus Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks. That's another really potentially interesting matchup that we're excited about. But before we jump into the NBA Cup, we have to talk about the flailing Los Angeles Lakers and the 41-point defeat that they suffered at the hands of the Miami Heat last night. Miami Heat's not a great team either, man. It's not like you went down there and got boat raced by a front-running contender. You went down there to South Beach and got boat raced in the first half of a season by a traditionally second half team that's currently below 500.
Yep.
It was really rough.
And the effort, man, I think you've seen the discussion online, but this was a team that looks frustrated, that looks dejected, that looks like they don't believe right now they can go out and win.
And like to that point, let's dispel like some what I think are some thoughtless or just kind of hot takes that are really superficial. Like these are NBA players. These are professional athletes who have risen to the pinnacle of their sport. They not only have an NBA contract, they're playing for one of the legacy teams, one of the most storied franchises in all of sports, right? It's not that they don't like to compete. That's just a goofy idea. These guys got here because they love to compete. There's something else going on. You're 100% right about the effort. 100% right about the effort. You saw it on the floor last night.
The competing part is ridiculous. I mean, LeBron's a billionaire. Do you think he's playing in the NBA if he doesn't like competing and the competition? He's got no other reason. But there, he's accomplished everything he needs to in his career. This isn't something he's doing just, for funsies. If he didn't like the competition, if he wasn't addicted to it, he wouldn't be doing this.
Truly bizarre decision by a billionaire who doesn't like competition. I agree with you. Instead of selling on your yacht to Mallorca, you're deciding to go down there and, slam into Bam Adebayo. But when you watch the Los Angeles Lakers play, I think there are a couple of things. Leading up to this game, there had been a good deal of discussion about the decline, including on this podcast, about the decline of LeBron James. I think we were a bit more measured in our take of the decline on LeBron James, in that, he's declining from Mount Rushmore, which means he's, still a good player, but he's not the type of player that GMs can continue to do a half-ass job and get him to save their ass on the back end. He's not that guy anymore. And I think you see that more defensively than anywhere else. But with that said, I mean, so last night he had 29 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists, which is an incredible stat line. And he also shot 66%. He was a minus 21. That's actually one of the better plus minuses for the Lakers last night, which is pretty rough. But that kind of goes to one of the points I was about to make. Yes, LeBron was at one time one of the premier defenders in the league. He's nowhere near that anymore.
That's no longer the case. No.
Yeah, no, that's no longer the case. And the thing is that that's fine. That in fact, let's go a step further. It's priced in. He's about to be 40. You don't sign a 40-year-old player to your team expecting to be competitive or even potentially a contender without knowing there are going to be certain things LeBron can't do. Chief amongst them should be he's not going to play 82 games. And he can't play 38 minutes a night. Right?
Yeah.
You have to make certain concessions. I would suspect that another one of those concessions would be that LeBron's not going to be scurrying around the perimeter guarding their best player. He's not going to be the guy who's running across the floor to attack the closeout. Like he's going to be honestly, he's going to be the least active defender, theoretically. But when you look at the defensive ratings per player on the Los Angeles Lakers, outside of the 3 bigs and Cam Reddish, LeBron has the best defensive rating on the team. Now, I don't say that to suggest he has a good defensive rating. Those are 2 entirely different things. He has, outside of AD, Koloku, Jackson Hayes, and Cam Reddish, he has the best defensive rating on the team. It's just the rest of the players have an atrocious defensive rating. This is a bad defensive team.
Absolutely. And the bigger issue, this is compounded by the fact that Redick has basically started staggering. Not started. They stagger LeBron and AD. And I get
100%.
the concept offensively. You want to have one of your two best offensive players on the court at all times. That's a very simple concept. It's been, done by coaches since the dawn of time. The problem for that is that AD is basically the only thing that holds this defense together at all. And LeBron, at age 40, has declined athletically to the point where he really needs a rim protector. And without AD there, these lineups with LeBron at the 4 are relying on LeBron to basically play a combination of drop coverage, but also be something of a rim protector, which he is both too small and cannot jump high enough anymore to do.
100%.
And it's the Lakers just hemorrhage points with LeBron, and without LeBron on the court without AD. It is a
well, to be clear, because that's one of those talking points. Yeah. That's one of those talking points that's been circulated a lot. And I think look, LeBron is one of the most agenda-driven athletes in NBA media. You're either pushing the narrative that he's the GOAT or you're pushing the narrative that he's a bum. And one of the things that, it is true that they're a negative with LeBron on the floor and a positive with him off the floor. It's also true they're a negative with AD on the floor and a positive with him off the floor.
Oh, there's no easy answer. What's happened with this team is they have not really made any major upgrades in the last couple of years. This offseason, they did not sign anyone besides their draft
downgrades. They've made downgrades.
They made significant downgrades. The only person they signed were their rookies, Dalton Knecht and Bronny James. Bronny James is not a part of the rotation. Knecht is part of the rotation, but he's a rookie who struggles defensively, to put it mildly at times. And the core of this team is the same as the team that was constructed post-trade deadline 2 years ago when they traded away Russell Westbrook and got Rui and D'Lo. And that team was maximized for a LeBron that was both more athletic and moved a lot better than he does today. It also the pieces at that point, the secondary pieces, which included like Dennis Schroeder, were significantly better than the ones on this team currently. This team does not have a secondary ball handler. This team,
Schroeder would be a starting point guard on this team without question.
100%.
He would be the acquisition of Dennis Schroeder. So I saw a tweet from Lakers Lead's Twitter page this morning, and the question was, "What would you do if you woke up and you were Rob Pelinka today?" And without hesitation, my thought was, I would trade D'Angelo Russell for Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah. 100%. And not only that, the replacement for Schroeder they got is Gabe Vincent, who is part of a number of Lakers, and going back to Kendrick Nunn, who came to LA and have seemingly been hurt / lost their superpowers, their basketball powers. There were other major pieces.
Did he have superpowers? I mean,
I
remember a playoff run, but outside of that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but outside of that playoff run, a couple series for the Miami Heat that year, I don't remember much in the way of Gabe Vincent superpowers. Am I misremembering? Am I misremembering his history?
No, superpowers is too strong, but he was a rotation piece for the Heat for a couple of years, and he was a rotation caliber player who averaged 9 points a game. This version of Gabe Vincent averages 3.
He averages 9 points a month.
Yeah, 9 points a month. Jared Vanderbilt, who was a major piece of that, that rotation, I think was even a starter on that team. He has disappeared. He's the new. I believe the most recent report has him out basically indefinitely as they figure out.
You can't convince me he's still alive. I don't even know if Jared Vanderbilt's a real person.
There's that video of him taunting Ant Edwards, and Ant Edwards being like, "You haven't played basketball in 2 years. What are you talking?"
The problem is AI is too good. They could have just made that video to try to. But the thing is, look, I'll give Pelinka a little bit of a pass on Vanderbilt. The injuries have just kept the guy off the court, right? As far as Jared Vanderbilt's skill set and what he does, it's sorely needed on this team. If he could come back, be fully healthy, and play to the potential we've seen him play with in the past. That said, can't give him a pass on Schroeder.
No.
The reason I can't is because Schroeder was good when he was there.
He was the most effective guard outside of Reeves in the postseason. In fact, he was one of the reasons they beat that Warriors team because he stuck with Steph Curry.
Well, and the thing I'd say is I mean, I outside of Reeves, I understand what you mean by that, but at the same time, they're doing two very different things, and they were both doing it very well.
Yes.
I think the other thing Schroeder brings to that team that's much needed that they don't currently have is a little attitude.
Yes.
But Schroeder is a attacking, very quick point guard who can handle the ball, initiate the offense, and then go down on the other end of the court and annoy the hell out of your best player. They do not have anybody on the court who can do those things right now, which is part of the problem that they have because they've had to put LeBron on ball more as a playmaker, and I think 40-year-old LeBron is less capable of doing that, which has led to more turnovers. He's not really able to compromise the defense in the way that he has in the past. Another player that I'll throw out there is just a major, maybe major is a bit too big of a word. Spencer Dinwiddie, man. We saw him with the Nets. We saw him with the Mavericks before the Nets, and then he's now back with the Mavericks. He was on the Lakers last year. They had him out there during the playoffs in a very limited role. He really didn't seem at all like he had the green light to shoot. The Nets most certainly used Spencer Dinwiddie better than the Lakers did. But Jason Kidd appears to know how to get the best out of Spencer Dinwiddie. He's been on a little run here of late where he's probably averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of 17 to 20 points a game over the last 5 games. It's Spencer Dinwiddie's another guy who would be a starting point guard on this team.
100%. The one of the other issues this team has, besides the fact that the personnel doesn't work, was that this is a team. If you look at it, they are starting AD, Rui, LeBron, Reeves. Even Reeves is tall. This is a team that's designed to play a bruising physical style of basketball. This is a team that's designed to overpower you, slow the game down, and just like lean on teams. And the rotations, and this goes into a separate conversation about JJ Redick, but the rotations have moved LeBron to point guard, which now, which means he's at the top of the key. Have basically they have them playing a style of play that does not maximize the current personnel. And I don't know the full answer to that because they don't really have another playmaker besides LeBron who can create shots for others. That's a big problem. That's why LeBron has to play there. But in last year and the year before, this team was at its best when they were bigger than their opponents, and they just leaned on them. I'd always visualized like 40-year-old LeBron as playing sort of a hybrid Carmelo, where he would get the ball in the post and create for others through there and use his weight to basically back down his opponent and create shots for others.
Kind of like a little mini Jokic.
Mini Jokic, and the benefit of that is that collapses the defense. Now LeBron decided to go another direction, and last year was a marksman 3-pointer. That's a great direction, but it doesn't collapse the defense. That's one thing this team really struggles at, and it doesn't get talked about enough. If you only have 3-point shooters without someone who can get into the lane and destabilize defense and force people to collapse on them, it is actually relatively easy to defend you as long as your defense is disciplined and everyone knows their job, because people are not moving. People are not like you just all you have to do is
especially when you don't have a lot of 3-point shooting along the perimeter. Like it's like it'd be different if you had a ton of like marksman 3-point shooters out there and you were swinging the ball kind of like a la OKC or Boston.
Yep. This Lakers team, and this is one of the things that happened with LeBron's decline. LeBron is not able to get in the lane as well or as consistently as he used to. He can turn it on for like really brief spurts at times, and if he has someone who's much smaller than him guarding him, and that person isn't like adept at like swiping the ball away, he can just use his strength and just bolt them down. But even that takes so much more time than just blowing by your defender that it doesn't stress the defense in the same way, because the defense can slowly move and rotate over.
Let's circle back to the comment you made a second ago. I want to ask you a question. You said this opens the door to a conversation about JJ Redick.
Yes.
Put it in that context. Like talking about the rotations, the style of play, and all of that. Put this in the context of. I guess first of all, I just asked the question: do you think JJ Redick's doing a good job?
I think that JJ is doing the right thing by trying to figure out how to maximize his current personnel. So I do not think he is doing the wrong thing right now. I think that there is some experimentation that is worthwhile. And I think that it makes absolute sense to try LeBron at point guard after his run in the Olympics, where it was like, this actually really worked with the right personnel.
I agree.
Yeah,
you can't watch the Olympics and not try that.
Yeah. And I think that his all of the changes that he has done and the quirks that he's done have caused the team to be out of whack and forget the identity that made them really good last year. I think he needs to lean more into a more physical offensive style on offense, and I think I don't think they need to make that their full identity, but I do think that they need to mix things up and become a little less predictable, and maybe 10 times a game put LeBron in the post and and have it run out of there just to make the defense a little less comfy and a little less relaxed. It's the Lakers will score on you, but it is not. They're not stressing defenses. Defenses know what's going to happen, and are the Lakers going to make shots or not? That really is.
It's also kind of like if we'll talk about this in a little while, but if I'm going up against OKC, like my thing is going to be like I'll put my best player on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm going to try to do my best to hold him under 35, and I'm going to scheme with the rest of my team defense to take Jalen Williams, and if he's on the floor, Chet Holmgren away. Because I don't think the rest of your team can beat me.
Yeah.
That's basically the and that's it's debatable whether that works with OKC or not.
No,
Not debatable whether it works with LA. There are
No.
two guys on that team who can consistently beat you. Now, if you get in the game, and this is one of those nights where Dalton connects, knocked down 3 or 4 3-pointers in the first quarter, yeah, you call a timeout, you make some adjustments. But if you certainly go into the game thinking it's the two-man game with LeBron and AD that I need to worry about. If I don't let those two beat me, there is not enough firepower on this roster for them to beat 27 teams in the NBA.
It's not even the two of them. You need to stop one of them. You hold one of them to 20 points. I don't care if it's on 9 and 10 shooting. If you hold one of them to 20 points, you've won that game. Unless there's like a Dalton Connect 9 for 11 3-point shooting, which you can, which in that case, you just, as Barkley likes to say, you tip your cap and you go along the way. The bigger issue that I think has emerged this year, the defensive rotation stuff with LeBron and AD is problematic. I think that there has been a mistake in letting this go on for so long. I also think that indulging LeBron on his desire to play all 82 games, that was a bad idea. You have to weigh that with the fact that LeBron is LeBron and will do what LeBron wants. And sometimes, as any parent will tell you, you have to let your kid fail, to convince him to change. But it's gone on too long. He's clearly exhausted. He could use a day off. And if you're not going to give him a day off, they need to cut his minutes. He is when the
that's what I was about to say. To me, it's less the 82 game thing. If the guy feels good. JJ Redick said this, if he feels good, he needs to be on the floor.
Yeah.
The question is, does he feel good? And it's hard to imagine. And, this is kind of where I'll put a little, there are a couple places where I'll put a little blame on JJ Redick here.
Yeah.
I think one, I agree with you 100%. Said the same thing about Jason Kidd early on. I think both of those guys are smart guys. They're smart coaches. Kidd obviously has a lot more experience coaching than JJ Redick does. This is JJ Redick's first go at it, but he's got some experience around him. He's got some guys with a lot of coaching experience around him, and they have every right to experiment and figure out what works best for them, given the incredible, debilitating limitations of the Los Angeles Lakers roster. They're trying to figure out there are a bunch of holes in that ship, and if you're JJ Redick, you're sitting in your office or in the damn car wash lobby watching film or wherever it is that you are, and you're trying to figure out how to plug those holes. And it has to feel overwhelming because there's so many of them. And he's experimenting, trying to figure out those things. I agree with you that some of the experimentation has gone on a little long because it's obvious some of it's not going to work. We're not going to be able to field 2019. You want to roll out the Gabe Vincent, D'Angelo Russell, Jackson Hayes, LeBron James, who's the other guy that comes out there in that weird little lineup? Kaloku, whoever it is. You want to field that roster? Fine. 2019 LeBron probably can compensate for that. That's one of those things where 2019 LeBron can go out there and sort of take over the game for 4-minute stretches and keep you above water. 40-year-old LeBron, 2024 LeBron can't do that. He cannot be on the floor by himself holding up a group of guys that honestly haven't really demonstrated outside of one or two of them that they're really NBA level rotation players this season.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And the other point that I'll add, and this I think is a byproduct of the fact that they are staggering LeBron and AD so much. When the Lakers bench does not have a separate identity from the starters, it is an extension of the starters with just worse players put into it. And that is a big problem to me. They have the personnel. And this would happen if you just took LeBron, if you stopped staggering LeBron and AD so much and they went out as a pair in some situations. I think ideally I would want to play LeBron around 28 minutes a game, which was what the Spurs played Duncan when he was 38 and they won the title.
That's what the Warriors are doing with Curry right now.
Yeah, but they have the personnel to play a super run and gun 3-point, speed up the tempo just so you can generate points. They if you put Connect, Reeves, D'Lo, I put Jackson Hayes for running, you're gonna shed points, but just have them run fast break offense. Have them run the loyal Marymount old style offense where they're just gunning and run the teams up, and you'll be able to catch fire at times and even increase some leads and just be able to offset. You're not playing 12 minutes of that. You're playing 3 or 4 minute stretches. Have them run, and you'll be able to maximize the personnel. You'll be able to get some easier points that way. You'll be able to tire out your opponents. And they need to start doing more of that. They're not doing that. They're just bringing in, like, because they're keeping in LeBron for like 35 minutes a game and AD is the Lakers played a very slow pace. A very slow pace, and it's accentuated by the fact that LeBron is now the primary ball handler. So team is playing as fast as he wants to play, and he's walking the ball.
Yeah, I mean, he is one of those guys though. Like Luka, Jokic, different, but can have similar results as like Kevin Love. Like their ability to their outlet pass ability is elite. Like their ability. I mean, LeBron a few games ago had a two-handed chest pass about 90 feet up the court.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
Yeah, no, and I'm not saying you can't have him on the court with this. I'm just saying that like the strategy has to be with this lineup that we're gonna gun. We're gonna gun.
I agree with you completely. And I think one of the big problems with this lineup too is that when LeBron's not the primary ball handler, it's a lot of the times it's D'Angelo Russell, who's even worse for pace.
Well,
you need more pace.
He's also not a creator. D'Lo's looking for his own shot. And that's not a problem. That is how point guards have evolved. We're nearing extinction of the Jason Kidd type of point guard who's just primarily out there to pass for others and is going to get 10 points or 12 points a game. That's not really a thing that's happening anymore. We want our point guards to be like primary offensive threats who can create for others. I know that's kind of the way the NBA is heading.
If the Monstars zapped LaMelo Ball, you would have D'Angelo Russell.
Yes. But, so I think that the bench really needs to be rethought because they connect, Reeves, D'Lo, find some 3-point shooting somewhere. That lineup could work in some case. The bigger issue is that they're not changing their strategy depending on the lineups. It's kind of like he has one style of play he really wants to play, and that sort of continues throughout. And players are being asked to fit into that, which works. It makes sense. But with my experience with older teams, having watched the Spurs specifically during the late Duncan years, there were different. There was Spurs A and Spurs B, and the Spurs B team, the bench team, was a whole they did full on hockey shifts in a lot of cases. They brought on Bellinelli, they brought on Patty Mills. They brought out a bunch of shooters, and they would run. And they would, you would keep Ginobili on the bench, but it was a whole they would play 10-9-10 guys. And the reason for that was that this lineup was going to play faster. It was going to change the style of play, and it does allow you to survive with limited defensive rosters for short periods of time, especially if you're playing them against more limited second units offensively. You can't exploit their defensive weaknesses. So I think the Lakers need to make some adjustments there. I think that falls on Redick. I think that falls pretty clearly on Redick.
Yeah.
But I think to take a step back, the Lakers are still above 500. We that has to be recognized. They're having a bad stretch, but this is if this was a situation where they were 4-13 to start the year,
they're not the Sixers.
Yeah, they're not the Sixers. So I think that some of this is a little contrived and a little.
Yeah, well, I mean that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like there is always going to be the crowd that. It's the Lakers for one, and it's LeBron for two. They're going to be the crowd that pounce on that. There's been more thought and energy given to the Lakers' current situation than there has been to the Sixers. Which honestly, if we're measuring it in terms of net disappointment, the net disappointment rating for the Philadelphia 76ers is infinitely greater because the Lakers did nothing this offseason to improve.
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all. The 76ers went all in. And so if you're going to go all in and acquire a player like Paul George, and position yourself to be a contender and start the season this way, it's infinitely more disappointing. So I think I agree with what you said. Um, in order of contrivance, or in order of exaggeration. Um, Honestly, I haven't heard a ton of JJ's doing a bad job. Um, I think part of that is because JJ came out the gate like it was clear very early on, and I think largely it has to do with his ability to get Dalton Connect involved and create moments where you really see the full potential of Dalton Connect.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody can look at Dalton Connect through his first 22 games or whatever and say they're disappointed in his play. I think you have to look at him and where they drafted him and think they really that's a steal for them that they were able to get him. And he'll continue to get better. And I think you owe a lot of his early season performance and his development up to this point and his continued development to JJ Redick, who's probably better positioned to help him than a lot of coaches would have been. Um, so I'm not. And also JJ Redick was there for the drafting of Dalton Connect, and like I think it would have been a no brainer to take him at that point, but he did draft him, so I'll give him credit with that too. But I don't think JJ Redick has done a bad job.
I do not.
And I don't think that the like even the times where you can point at it and say like he needs to make this change, he needs to make this adjustment, like. Yeah, I mean, and he's the only way for him to learn that is for it to not work, and then when it doesn't work, we acknowledge, we observe it, we see it, we comment on it, but like, he still has plenty of time to make these adjustments. But the truth is, I think like there has been some diminished play from LeBron. I still don't think, from a point of view of blaming where the Lakers are this season, I don't think you can put that on LeBron because if you're not pricing in some level of diminished play for a 40-year-old player, I mean, to put it bluntly, you're fucking insane. Like,
Yeah.
like
What are we doing here?
the problem has to be the front office. JJ
Yeah.
Redick's issues will be a result of the limitations this roster place upon him. Where LeBron is exposed will be because once again you had another GM thinking LeBron was going to plug holes that they left in the roster, and at 40 he's no longer capable of doing that. At least not the number of holes you've left in the roster.
Well, and like just to put a pin on this, the bigger issue I see going forward is the Lakers are continuously in trade discussions. They're constantly being talked about trading for someone. One player who's been swirling the team this entire season so far is Valanciunas. So, and I think that to me, that worries me because I think the specific issue the Lakers need on the second unit scoring, which Valanciunas would slot in as, is to play faster. And if you watch Jonas Valanciunas, speed is not necessarily the thing that he excels at. In fact, he needs to play at like a 70 possession per game pace and like that leads me to believe that they are not identifying the right solution to their problems. I do not think that the Lakers, like, I understand the logic. It's LeBron can't play fast anymore. What are we going to do? We're going to slow the game to basically ground to a halt. We're going to get a big center in there. He'll come in there. He'll replace AD. He'll like bash some heads together. That's good, but that also means that you are going to be playing LeBron 38 minutes a game this year throughout. It also does not resolve.
Not a winning recipe.
It does not resolve their bigger issue, which is like Hayes is limited, but he's like, if you want to play in 10 minutes a game in the regular season, I have no problem with that. Like
I was just about to say that. Like I'm not gonna sit here and say that the Lakers couldn't benefit from an upgrade at the backup 5 role. I'm not gonna say that they couldn't because they could. The problem is that their need along the perimeter is so great.
Yeah.
And when I look at Jackson Hayes, I mean, I've seen him a lot in New Orleans. Like very, very, very familiar with Jackson Hayes. Probably more familiar than I would like to be. But what I would say is in Jackson Hayes, you have a long, athletic guy that you can give very specific directions to. Be the lob threat at the rim on offense, protect the rim on defense, get back on defense. Like he's capable of all these things. You just have to give very specific direction to him so that he knows exactly what his role is and where he's supposed to be. I mean, there are limitations on what you can expect from him, but he's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is that you can't stop a cold along the perimeter on defense.
And you have no one besides LeBron who can like run the offense for others. LeBron's we mentioned this in the last spot. He's got a 42% assist percentage when he's on the court, which means that when he's on the court, he's assisting on 42% of all of his teammates' field goals. Anyone who's played basketball knows that's just a really bad sign. That means that no one else is generating offense for their teammates. That basically LeBron's either assisting on the shot or that shot, that player scored for themselves. Because you don't assist in the majority of field goals that a team makes. And they need to, I think a much better addition than trading for Valanciunas would be to sign someone like Elfrid Payton, who is, he excels as a passer. He's a big guard who's a pretty good defender, limited offensively, but he's a very good passer. He had 20 assists on his brief spell in a game on his brief stint with the Pelicans. And he can defend. That's a much lower cost move. You just sign him off the scrap heap.
Yeah, we've talked about Lonnie Walker, who's another player who, if you go back to their Western Conference run, you're not in the Western Conference Finals run without Lonnie Walker, and Lonnie Walker is currently playing in like Greece or Israel or somewhere like that right now. He's another player who was impactful for the Lakers that they let walk away and they've not brought back. You might be able to point to one of those players and say, for whatever reason, they just didn't work in LA. That's fine. You can't point to all of them. The common denominator is not them. The common denominator is Rob Pelinka.
That's what I was going to say. Because, in fact, all those players did work. They just were not re-signed. And I think that's an indictment on Pelinka. This team has gotten worse because they've shed a lot of their secondary pieces. The ones they've maintained are more limited.
Caruso's another one that's gone.
Caruso's gone. KCP's gone. Lonnie Walker's gone. Scottie Pippen Jr.'s gone. Jay Huff's
Oh, Lord
gone.
Jesus. Scottie Pippen Jr. is the biggest one. I forgot all about him. Scottie Pippen Jr. is a guy who basically didn't even get a chance in LA.
He did not.
Goes to Memphis and looks incredible.
He looks better than Marcus Smart right now. This is like there's at least 6 or 7 players that have gone through the Lakers system, and many of them were key rotation pieces, like Dinwiddie, all these guys, and they just were not re-signed. This was a roster construction issue, and I think if we're assigning blame, the biggest blame here, yes, LeBron has declined. Yes, AD's lost a step on defense. His offense is still just as good as ever. He's in a little bit of a slump right now, but if you have to also weigh that with the fact that he started off the season lava hot, averaging 32, 33 a game, and so. They declined a little bit, but the real reason this roster looks as bad as it is, it's on Pelinka. It's on the front office, and that's 100%. What people should be casting blame on, not the coach.
You also signed Max Christie.
Another guy you could play fast with. Another guy you could put him in as a run and gun. Yeah.
Yeah, the contract you gave him says he's a part of your core future. And
this is your 7th man.
Yeah. And he really, up until this point, hasn't gotten an opportunity to be that. He's been better of late. He struggled early on. But look, like him not being better early, like he's a young player who's just now really fully getting his opportunity. Like there are going to be struggles that come with that. You've got to play through those struggles and let him develop. And, maybe the approach JJ Redick took, was that, and I'm just misreading it. And 6 weeks from now, we'll be talking about how Max Christie's playing better. If Max Christie could play himself into that starting role, that'd be huge. But like he's sort of at this point kind of another what was the front office thinking type move. Because what the front office did, it's a very the Max Christie thing honestly kind of um, raises some of the similar questions that you have with Denver, where it's like, does the front office and the coaching staff talk?
No, there's been this question the entire time with the Lakers. They've gone through now. We're talking like we're three coaches in the last 3 years. We're on coach number three. One of them won
Yeah.
a title and was immediately jettisoned. And this is the blame is being cast sorely on the coaches by the front office, and that's this is a roster construction issue with this team. Are there things Reddick can do better? Yes. Are there things that that probably will get better at? Yes. Rotation needs to be fixed, but that alone is not going to solve this issue. And if we're looking to cast blame, it needs to be on the front office and ownership, because I wouldn't, not, front offices don't typically make no moves. That kind of indicates that ownership also has some things like you can probably do something if you want, but unless you think it's going to really, really move the needle, please don't. Like it falls on those two parties, and I
I
think
think
that
I
needs to
think I
be
think
done.
this is going to be the year where the Lakers front office like finally is called to count. And the reason I think that that's true is while I think you'll be able to point to some signs of diminished play from LeBron, I think when you get to the end of the season, his stats are going to look about like what they look like right now, where you're going to have a guy who averaged 20, 21, 22 points a game, 8 rebounds,
22,
9
8, and 8.
assists.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're going to be able to say, like, oh, well, okay, like there was some diminished play there, but like how many teams in the NBA wouldn't love to have a guy averaging 22, 8, and 9? Like, and then you're going to look at AD and you're going to be like, well, he's averaging 24 and 10.
Well,
And then like you're going to look at Austin Reeves. And he's another player where you can see JJ Redick's influence has benefited him.
yeah.
And then you're going to see Dalton connect, and you're going to say, like, well, I mean, I think you got more out of Reeves than you have previously. You got more out of Dalton Connect than anyone expected. You might not have got as much out of LeBron, but like, did you not expect that when he was 40? And you're going to look at AD and say you had a great year with AD. The problem is everything around those guys was poorly constructed, and you're going to try to point the finger at the coach. But then here's one of the interesting things that's different about the coach this time. He doesn't have a lot of coaching experience, but you know what he has that no other coach who came to the Lakers had? Everybody already has a baked in point of view about who JJ Redick is because
Yes.
he was such a prominent media figure in the
Yeah.
basketball world. And they all believe, like, if you asked anybody, what do you think about JJ Redick? There are two things I think everybody would say about him. He's a smart basketball mind, and he is an obsessive, driven, detail-oriented person. And so what ends up happening when you try to blame him, the only way it works is if this locker room descends into one of those firing squads where it's finger pointing and it's always going back to the coach. And as of now, that has not been the case. So unless you end up with something like that, I think it's going to be hard dependent on the coach. I think it's going to be hard dependent on the players. I mean, you can point at Gabe Vincent and all these other guys, Jackson Hayes, you can point at them. But everybody's just going to say, you got what I expected you to get from him.
Yeah. Well, and just I think this, we can put a cap on it, but you decided to sign Bronny. There was a whole firestorm around that, and setting aside whether that was the right move or the wrong move, and whether he was a legitimate prospect, that's a whole separate discussion. But the moment you did that, you were putting LeBron in a position where people were going to say that LeBron was taking one of the 15 roster spots and putting his kid in there. And that was, if this roster didn't look good, that was going to put him in a bad light. And so if you're going to make that decision, it's incumbent on you to try to protect your star by making some other moves to make it seem like you actually care about this team. By not making any other moves, the result of this is this team is both atrophied, but it also makes it pretty clear that this isn't like winning a title is not their utmost priority right now for the ownership and the front office. That is not like they are not willing to trade their young picks. They are not They did not make any moves even on the periphery. Like they didn't even like bring in Markel Fultz, like Boston.
Dude, they haven't even I mean, at this point, like we're in full on try everything you can mode. Quincy Olivares on this team. And I don't know what he is in an actual NBA game. I know that in the summer league and in the preseason, he showed flashes that warrant, bringing him in and seeing what he can do in small little minutes,
Yeah.
just to see what you have. But my prediction is this: this is one of three things. They right the ship and they meet expectations. They do not right the ship, and this is the last time you see Rob Pelinka.
Yeah.
Or they do not right the ship. Rob Pelinka stays, and effectively Jeannie Buss and the leadership over at with the Lakers effectively tells the world we never had any intentions of competing, and Rob Pelinka did exactly what we wanted him to
We
do,
wanted to do.
was just
Yeah.
ride out the rest of the LeBron years and sort of keep our cards close to our chest, and we'll look to rebuild later.
Yep. I think that's exactly it. I think you hit on the nose. And I think the last option you talked about is probably what's actually happening here.
Well, I mean, it certainly is going to, like, you'll that will reveal itself if Rob Pelinka keeps his job at the end of this year. That is 100% what has happened. Either that or they've met expectations, and somehow Rob Pelinka is a genius, and there was more on this roster than anybody knew all along.
Yep.
All right. Well, moving on. Um, earlier this week we saw the NBA Cup sort of play itself out. We have our quarterfinal brackets now. We've got some interesting games. We've got Bucks Magic. We've got Mavs Thunder. We've got several and especially with the Mavs Thunder, like sort of like some rivalry postseason implications with that. I also think you can make the same argument for Orlando, Milwaukee. We also have Knicks Hawks, and then we have Rockets Golden State. Where do you want to start? How about Rockets Mavs? I'm sorry, Mavs Thunder.
No, Rocket Mavs would be an interesting one because that's not happening. But Mavs Thunder, I think that's going to be the best game of the night. I'm really excited about that. I think the Mavs have hit a groove. I think that Luka. There's so much they're starting to become their own little media ecosystem that follows him around. That kind of cracks me up about is Luka in shape? That seems to be now a 24/7 news cycle of its own.
Yeah, Bill Simmons brought it up again yesterday in his podcast where he said, call me crazy, but I like to have my players in shape, and that's how I feel about Luka.
Yeah, well, and Tim McMahon gives weekly updates now on Luka's physical conditioning. But
the thing that cracks me up about the Tim McMahon thing, where he's basically suggesting that the Mavs kind of held Luka out with a so-called wrist injury just to get him in shape. Was so you're telling me that the guy's not in game shape and you whipped him into game shape in 6 days? I don't buy this. Whether I actually think that the injury was minor, but I don't think it was about getting him in game shape. I think it was about getting guys in rhythm.
That's quite possible. I mean, the only explanation if it takes you 6 days to get in shape is you were carrying a hell of a lot of water weight, which means
Yeah.
But the bigger, regardless, I think that they've sort of kids toned down the rotation, nonsense a little bit. The bench players start to play a little better. The only player who's not really picked up is Clay, but he has plantar fasciitis, which does it really honestly explain why it's hard. That's really difficult for a shooter who relies on movement to get open. That's just gonna I can absolutely understand why that's very limiting for him. But Najee Marshall's playing better. Dinwiddie's playing better. I think that's probably a little unsustainable, but
the only note I would put on that is it has not been unsustainable under Jason Kidd. Now, maybe the level of play is somewhat unsustainable, but Jason Kidd has always gotten the best out of Spencer Dinwiddie.
Yeah. And then Quentin Grimes to me has been one of the big breakout players. He was really hyped up in the preseason, and there were talks about him getting a 5-figure extension before the year that didn't come true. Came out the gates just shooting really poorly. Luka going out allowed Marshall, Grimes, to get more touches, get more in rhythm, find out how to play with their teammates. They broke through their shooting slumps during that period in time, and their shooting has reverted more to the mean. I think that the Mavs are starting to look like the team I thought was going to be the most dangerous team in the West. On the other side, the Thunder, we've been harsher on the Thunder than a lot of folks.
Well, real quick before we move on to the Thunder,
Yeah.
like with there are a couple of things with the Mavericks that when you look at Najee Marshall and Quentin Grimes, like you're talking about two guys who defensively bring a lot of energy as well.
Yes.
Quentin Grimes has really come on of late. I mean, Najee Marshall was on a streak there, I think, of like 4 or 5 20-point games in a row. Najee Marshall started knocking down 3-point shots towards the end of that streak. Didn't get injured. There was an illness going around the Mavs locker room after that Miami Heat game.
It's called the South Beach flu. What happens
Yeah,
when you
well, it was weird.
when you
It was
go out
weird.
and party a little too hard the night before.
Well, Jimmy Butler was out with an illness the game before. And then you had 2 guys in Dallas get sick the day of that game. And then after that, you just had it run through the locker room, and every other day there'd be a new player out with illness. I don't know what happened. Najee Marshall is the recent victim of it. Derek Lively had it. There were a number of guys who had it. But at any rate, the Dallas Mavericks have hit a full stride now where, honestly, like when you start to point to their weakness, you're going to get all the way down to the 8th or 9th guy in the rotation before you start to say, like, it's Maxi Kleba and Jaden Hardy that are having the biggest struggles. And quite frankly, like, those 2 guys aren't really if you're getting as much out of Quentin Grimes, Najee Marshall, and Daniel Gafford as you do, those 2 guys aren't really going to impact winning as much. Now, if in playoff situations, I can see where you could need particularly Kleba and his versatility, what he provides on defense. But the other big story is, since Luka's return, he has returned to MVP level Luka, averaging about 35 points a game. I think that the other big thing going into this game, this NBA Cup quarterfinal, is PJ Washington.
Yes.
PJ Washington has absolutely owned the Oklahoma City Thunder. PJ Washington plays at Hall of Fame level when he goes to Oklahoma City. But PJ Washington appears to be really one of the big difference makers for Dallas. Gives them a lot of versatility on defense, and has in recent games really not in recent games, he's figured out how to be a versatile scorer. When he's knocking down the corner threes, he shoots them. When he's not, he attacks the rim. He posts up smaller players. He's got a nice little floater game now. PJ Washington really is the player who kind of puts the Dallas Mavericks over the top. There was a question the other day about whether he's a needle mover or not, and whoever was answering the question said he couldn't see PJ Washington as a needle mover. PJ Washington is absolutely, without question, the needle mover for the Dallas Mavericks.
I don't even understand what that means. He's a great rotation piece, like on a team that went to the finals last year. Like, he's also averaging, he's averaging 12 and 8. 12 and 8 on efficient shooting. He's a fantastic rotation piece. And anyone who watches him know he's integral to how they play. I think that this is the Mavs team I thought we were going to get at the beginning of the year. It took them a little while longer to get there than it has in the past, but actually not in the past. This is a Jason Kidd sort of thing. They start a little slow. Whether there's conditioning issues or not is kind of besides the point. But they've historically started slow, and they've gained. They picked up steam as the years go along. I've seen the Spurs used to do this every year for Tim Duncan's entire career. You work yourself into the form you want to be by the end of the season. It's an 82 game season. It makes total sense to me. I think that they are right now the most balanced team in the West. This is not a team that has any clear weaknesses anymore. Now, I will say that the one part of their roster that has been a little disappointing to me this year, and this may have been just outside expectations, I had really thought that you were going to see Lively make a big, big leap this year, and he hasn't been bad. To be very clear, he's not been bad. He had, like this, there's not been a
I mean,
decline.
he's been about what he was last
But
year.
yeah, he's basically like he's what he did last year, and sometimes he deploys a jump hook that they didn't have last year. And now they're the duo of him and Gafford is still producing something like 18 points and 14 rebounds, or like 20 points. So like they're getting the production they need out of the center position. But I think that's a good segue over to the Thunder because when we analyzed them at the beginning of the year, you and I, one of the big points that we talked about was what are we sure this is working, but what are we going to get from Hartenstein? Like he was given a $30 million a year contract. That seems a little excessive for a guy who was basically a backup until called into service when Mitch Robinson got hurt. And well, I still don't think $30 million a year contract is basically all-star level play, and I don't think he's at that level. He's averaging something around 13 and 13 since he came back. He's playing good defense. He'll give you a flashy pass or two. I think that the passing, his flashy passes make it look like his passing is a lot more of a weapon for them than it actually is. Like he's not averaging like 8 assists a game. I think but
Well, you remember earlier in the year when we did the OKC Dallas sort of comparison, how we almost went like position by position?
Yes.
Let's do it again.
All right. So Luka versus Shai. What are you who do you got?
Well, I mean, so thus far this year, I think we would all say, based on his current level of play, like taken as a body of work in this season, that it's a subpar Luka year.
Yes.
A subpar Luka year is 29, 8, and 8.
Yeah.
And over the last 2 games, like I said earlier, since he's returned from that wrist injury, you've seen Luka sort of return to form. And return to form means 37, 12, and 4, 36, 7, and 13. And then shooting the 3 better. Like my thing with the Luka versus Shai thing, any team in the NBA would be lucky to have either one of them.
Yes.
I'm not
100%.
throwing shade at Shai. Shai is an outstanding, like maybe the best pure scorer in the game right now. But
Yes.
that's sort of the issue to me. Is he might be the best pure scorer in the game. Luka's not far behind him. But when it comes to playmaking and what they do to a defense, there's no comparing the two. Luka's on another planet with that. And I mean, I absolutely give the edge to Dallas in the comp between Luka and Shai. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I would definitely lean Luka. I think especially in a playoff environment, I think his physicality and his ability to score against any type of defense separates him a little bit from Shai, who's can become very reliant on just his mid-range jump shot. Like that just like he hits it. He hits it. Be very clear.
Oh, it's going in. It's going in.
It's
Yeah.
going in. But like you saw that against Dallas last year. That was the weapon. That was the one weapon they could go back to over and over again. And that's just there's a limited effect. It just makes your offense kind of predictable. And so I would definitely lean Luka. At best, it's just it's a wash. But I would if you had to ask me who would I want to start a team with right now, I'm going with Luka.
Well, I mean, I go back to sort of like the way I would almost parse that out is sort of the with Shai, it's what I was saying earlier. Like Shai's going to get to his spots and knock down his shots. He's going to have 30, 32, 33 points. Like that's going to happen. Really good defense can maybe make that a little less efficient.
Yes.
But as a team, my approach to Shai is going to be I'm putting my best perimeter defender on him.
Yes.
And I'm going to scheme to take everyone else away. The
100%.
problem with taking that approach to Luka is, do you remember the 73-point game Luka had against Atlanta?
Yeah. No, I remember vividly.
Yeah, like that's a couple of things there. That's part of the reason why I say, like, I don't know that Shai is a better pure scorer than Luka. Because if you take that approach with Luka can absolutely detonate on you. Where Shai's never had, like, I think Shai's career high is 45 points or something like that. But even beyond this, the reason I bring up the 73-point game against Atlanta is not because he scored 73. It's because the Quinn Snyder press conference after. Do you remember this? Where they asked Quinn Snyder, well, why didn't you do this? He was like, we did. And they were like, well, why didn't you do this? He was like, we didn't. And he finally got exasperated with all this. And he says, do you think Luka Doncic cares if you make him go left? Do you think he cares if you make him go right? Do you think he cares if you force him to shoot the mid-range, throw the lob, do the step back? Do you think he cares if you're forcing him to swing it out to the corner? He doesn't care what you make him do. He can do all of it, and he can do it at an elite level. That, to me, is the difference, is that it doesn't matter what you do. Luka, and I think the only other player in the league that's like this is Jokic. They problem solve in real time and solve the problem at an elite level. And I think that's where the comparison between Shai and Luka breaks down.
Yes. If we're analyzing pure scoring as the ability to just have a 30-point quarter at will, if you're just in rhythm and everything's working, then Luka, the only player in the NBA actually at this point who can match that with Luka is probably Jokic. And Jokic doesn't do that as much because Jokic is not score first. Jokic is create for teammates first. But we've seen this year when he's like, fine, I guess I have to go, I have to start bringing, or bringing the offense first, that he can do that as well. And Shai is much more within the rhythm of the offense. But, I think, when people talk about this, they make this a Shai versus Luka debate. And I think that the rest of the roster is also revealing because there's a lot of talk about the Thunder being the deepest team in the West. But
I don't buy it.
I don't buy it because you just look at the next one, shooting guard, where you got Jalen Williams versus Kawhi.
Kyrie.
Kawhi. Kyrie. Versus Kyrie. I think that, Williams has had a good year. I believe he's averaging 22 points, 38% shooting from three, 50 plus from the field, 51 from the field. He brings, he's a very well-rounded player. He's at, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals on defense. The Thunder as a team they swarm and they swipe at the ball very effectively, quite honestly. They do that. That is their entire defensive strategy, was try to basically strip the ball, and they are really good at not committing fouls. So, you have to give a lot of props to how well drilled they are. He's also played center at times this year in some goofy lineups that they tried.
Yeah, when Hartenstein was out,
Harden,
sort of necessitated it.
And he's a fantastic player, but Kyrie's still a better player to me.
Kyrie's averaging 24, 5, and 5 on 49% from the floor, but 45% from three.
Yes.
And one of the things you said just then, I think, because here, I think that OKC is a really good team. The reason I have some degree of confidence that they won't defeat the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA Cup, I have less confidence about that than I do in a playoff series, because in a single game, a team can get hot from three.
Anything can happen.
Yeah. But the reason I have confidence about the Dallas Mavericks just being a better overall team, as we go through position by position, I think that kind of starts to reveal itself. But in addition to that, you said it. What do they do very well as a defense? They swarm, and they do what for the ball?
They swipe at it. They strip it. They try to strip it. That's their
Let me ask you this. If you're going up against a really good ball handler, what's the most dangerous thing you can do?
Oh, try to swipe at it. But yeah, make your
Luka and Kyrie on ball are basically baiting you to do that. And one of the other things that, just to quickly harken back to the advantage Luka provides you, particularly against OKC, Lou Dort causes so many problems for offensive players on the perimeter because of his center of gravity and how bulky he is. Luka is one of the few on-ball guards in the NBA that has the strength advantage in that matchup.
That's actually, the discussion about this, the Thunder can miss the point sometimes. They can be small, but their guards are really strong. Like Shai's the
Jalen Williams,
Williams, and he plays very physically. Dort plays really physically. Caruso plays physically. Shai plays physically. He also like the refs give him a ton of leeway just to do wild shit. To be quite honest, just go on YouTube and watch the clips of him like karate
I
kick.
saw him. He's the only player I've ever seen on a fadeaway jump shot put his foot on the hip of the person and extend his leg to create space and not get a call on
Yeah,
him.
it's the most blatant offensive foul shit you'll ever see. And the the Mavs are, Kyrie is Kyrie with his ability just to break people off the dribble. He's played against physical guards his entire career. He's very well positioned to do that. He excels against that type of defense historically because he can also just shoot. He's his 3-point shooting so good. Luka wants to play that way. He want he's very happy getting into like a very physical matchup. He's also taller. Like Luka has both the strength and the size, and the vision to exploit the size differential, like the height differential. They have really good rim running threats that can either that which is an antidote to a swarming defense. If everyone swarms on you, that usually means that there's some place that's open. Oftentimes, it's someone that can back cut to the rim. It's someone it's an open 3-point shot. They just by the nature of their roster match up well against what the Thunder are trying to do. And I think that gets accentuated as you go down the roster. You see, like when you got Najee Marshall, basically, he's going up against the Thunder have sort of been rotating players in and out, but like their mainstay basically at 3 this year has been Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins. And like neither one of those are big enough to really hang with a PJ Washington, or Najee Marshall. Like they just they're just smaller players. Like PJ Washington can like put these guys in the paint and sort of use
Oh,
them.
and he will do that. Like
Yeah,
he's going to post them. Yeah.
Marshall's the same thing. Those are both also two very physical players that are also going to sort of relish the physical battle. And I think that if you start going to the backup guard lineup, Casey Wallace is also really good, but Quentin Grimes is a very serviceable back. Quentin Grimes and Spencer Dinwiddie, they can give you minutes. They can hold water against them. Neither one of those are players that is going to get frazzled by a swarming defense.
I think Casey Wallace is a really good defensive player. He may even have an advantage over Quentin Grimes as a defender, although Quentin Grimes is a very good defender. I don't think Casey Wallace is capable of providing you with what Quentin Grimes is capable of providing you on the offensive end, though.
Not this year. He's been very poor from 3 this year, Wallace.
And
And it's part of it, like we've talked about, but it's part of a general decline. That they had an outlier shooting year last year. That was part of what we're saying. Like there's their main players, like Williams is still shooting well, but their secondary pieces, all their like across the board, we've seen a decline. And I think especially without Chet Holmgren, I think what Hartenstein is going to be able to hold his own in the matchup, but he's no match for Lively and Gafford combined. Like the production is like the Mavs are going to get more production from that spot. Than
just to put that in perspective. So, like, I forget what you said. Hartenstein was averaging. It was something like 13 and 13 or 14 and 13 or something like that. I mean, they're good
12,
numbers.
yeah. 13
Yeah.
and 12, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'd ventured to guess that, I think that with him and Lively and Gafford, like if you were comparing him to one of those guys individually, I think you could say like, maybe Hartenstein's a little bit better. Maybe it's a push. Maybe it's just sort of context dependent. What team are you putting them on, and what are you expecting of them? And Hartenstein is certainly a better fit in OKC than either one of those guys would be. And I think you could, say that their rim running makes them a better fit in Dallas than Hartenstein would be there. But the problem is that it's sort of pointless to compare Hartenstein to one of them individually because you have to compare him to the sort of twin-headed monster. And together, Gafford and Lively are averaging about 23 points a game and 14 rebounds.
Yes. No, yeah. It's And and we extend it to like shot blocks, where you're looking at like almost three block shots a game, basically 2 steals. It's the Mavs, when you look at them individually at their starter and back up, the numbers don't look impressive, but as a unit, as a two-headed platoon, that's where they thrive. And the other thing is they don't get tired because they both play 24 minutes a game basically, so you get peak effort from both of them. Uh, so I just think that hey, look, anything can happen in one
Yeah,
game.
100%.
Like I'm not saying if this were a betting podcast, I would absolutely not advise you to bet on either of this game because, especially the way the Thunder play, if they just get hot from 3 for one game and the Mavs start slow, it could just be over before it starts. But the dynamics, and maybe this will change once Holmgren comes back. I think that that we have to see how that full unit Thunder looks. But right now, the dynamics that caused the Thunder to lose that series against the Mavs last year, which should have been a 4-1 win for the Mavs, but they lost focus and sort of choked up Game 5. Was ended up being 4-2. Those dynamics have not changed.
No, I agree. They have changed. They have changed. I just think that the balance tilts more towards Dallas with the addition of Najee Marshall and Quentin Grimes.
Yeah, and it's less so when you get these conversations. You go, okay, see, it's like how dare you say this? We're a more talented team overall than the Mavs. That's besides the point. This is a matchup specific thing right here. The Mavs are a team that is built to be able to withstand the specific type of defensive pressure that the OKC Thunder play with, which is swarming defense, small guys who are really aggressive, hyper physical small guys. The Mavs are very comfortable 1 through 5 dealing with that. And, the other thing is they have the shooters. They have a secondary scorer who is as good, if not better, of like creating his own shot for himself in Kyrie. Like you get the ball out of Luka's hand, congratulations. You have Kyrie now doing that.
Yeah.
Like,
you don't get to swarm. Like when you go back and you look at the way the Thunder handled Jokic, where they just swarm him.
Yeah.
I mean, like, obviously I'm not saying that Gafford or Lively are anywhere near the level of Nikola Jokic. That's not the point before I even say what I'm about to say. But there is a difference in that those two guys there's nothing about their game that is stationary. They're not just standing there with the ball. Jokic will get a post position and stand there with the ball and look for where he can pick you apart. And that swarming defense can, if not frustrate him, at least force him to get the ball out of his hands before he has the opportunity to pick you apart. That's not going to happen with Gafford or Lively because they're not going to have the ball in their hands in that way. They're going to have, like, you might see them catch the ball at the free throw line, but it's going to be one dribble dunk. It's going to be one dribble pass. And, the final point I'll make about this matchup is, let's say, and another reason why I favor Dallas in this game is, let's say we have ourselves a close game. The problem for me for OKC is who on these two teams in a close winner-take-all game, inside 2 minutes, are you most excited about seeing with the ball in their hands?
Oh, Luka.
Yeah. The guy lives for the moment. Like, Luka's the kind of guy who could, just go back to the Minnesota game at the beginning of the season.
He's the most exciting player in the league in that moment. Oh, yeah. Point blank.
Yeah. I mean, you go back to that early game against the Timberwolves this year, which had kind of like, strangely for an early season game, it had kind of like some playoff level intensity to it because of how things went in the Western Conference Finals last year. But you look at that game, I remember texting you, like, I mean, Luka's playing okay in the first half or whatever. Like, he's clearly rusty, blah, blah, blah. Like, and then suddenly that moment came in the fourth quarter. He's the dude who just pulls up from 35 feet and just drains it. Like, no hesitation, and knocks down the shot. Like, so in that moment, I much prefer Luka. And when you start looking at role players, a la PJ Washington catching a ball in the corner and knocking down a three in last year's playoff run, the team, I think, who has the guy who's most capable of putting his teammates in that position where they're looking at open corner shots and close moments is Luka. And And then finally, if there's one guy on either of these rosters who, if he just gets hot from three, it is really difficult to deal with, it's the guy we haven't even mentioned his name the entire time we've been talking about this. It's Klay.
Yeah.
Like Klay Thompson, if he gets hot, I mean, Golden State was one of those games where he just got hot and, he starts knocking down shots. So I think that I agree with you. I don't expect a blowout. I expect it to be a close game. I think Oklahoma City is a good team. I just think that Dallas matches up with them very well. And they have a slight advantage, but this is a game. It's a single game, and in a single game, anything can happen.
Yep, I agree with that.
All right, now that we've beat the Mavericks Thunder game to death, let's move on to the next Western Conference matchup between the Warriors and the Rockets. Who do you like in this one, man?
Oh, I think this is going to be a bad game, unfortunately. The Warriors are reeling right now, and the reason they're reeling was that they were playing. They caught teams off guard by being really deep and playing really fast, and had some out. They were shooting over their heads a lot of positions. I mean, I think what was Buddy Hield was shooting like 50% plus on like 15 a game at the beginning of the year.
You don't think Buddy Hield's the greatest 3-point shooter in NBA history?
I think he's pretty good. I think he might have been.
He's an underrated 3-point shooter.
Yeah, but for example, he shot 50% in October, 40% in November, and is shooting 33% in December. Like he's just returning to the mean.
I think 40%, 40% is probably somewhere around where he'll be.
And I think that the bigger discussion with them is that this team, ever since they won the title in 22, the moves they've made have been somewhat perplexing to me. I do understand not wanting to give up too much assets for Lauri Markkanen over the summer. I do understand wanting to be cautious about that, but the player they drew the red line on was Brandon Podziemski, and I watched him last year. Podziemski was good. There was nothing from his play that indicated to me he had all-star potential. That he seemed like a very solid rotation piece. That's what I saw, and and then Kuminga as well. If you're like those were two pieces they basically drew the red line on. And and I think Markkanen is probably a better fit with this roster than either one of those two. The second piece I don't understand is if you're going to draw the red line in the sand and say, no, we're not getting these players are core pieces. We're not trading them no matter what. You would expect them then to make them like central parts of the roster. Kuminga has been benched. He's not happy. They never really gave him a chance to he wants something around a max contract. They clearly don't want to give him that, but they also clearly don't want to trade him. So I understand why he's like, well, what are we doing here? And Podziemski, not surprisingly, is having a little bit of a sophomore slump. He's shooting worse. He's shooting poorly, but he averaged 10 points a game or something like that last year, and he's down to 8. This wasn't like a player that was.
The idea that either of those two guys are untouchable in a trade scenario that involves Lauri Markkanen is insane.
It's absolutely insane, and so they had a strength in numbers thing going early on in the year.
And real quick, it's even more insane when you think about the waning years of Steph and Draymond's career and wanting to maximize that. Because the truth is, Lauri Markkanen working off of a player like Draymond Green, who understands the offense and can pass and create open looks for people, like Lauri Markkanen would be amazing in Golden State.
Curry. Let's put the lineup there. Curry. Let's put Wiggins, Markkanen, Green, and either then a 5 or a 2. That's a really good lineup. That's a really, really good lineup. The alternative right now is Curry, Wiggins, Green, Trace Jackson Davis, and then they've just basically had by committee for the 5th starting spot. This team is skidding because they were never as good as they were to begin the year. That was shooting luck. They caught teams off guard. They have both, regressed to the mean, and other teams now know what to expect against them, and know they can't take the foot off the brakes at any point.
Yeah.
The other thing is,
well, they're not underestimating players like Lindy Waters and stuff like that on the floor either.
yeah, there's also nobody besides Draymond Green and Curry on this roster who is a better than average passer. This, for a Steve Kerr offense which relies on wild passes, like a wild amount of passes, not wild passes. Sometimes they, like when the Warriors get in trouble historically, it's been they get a little out of control.
No, they need high assist numbers.
They need high assist numbers. And, at the beginning of the year, one of the things that was really, advantaging them was for the last 2 years prior to this one, their turnover numbers were off the charts high. Like what had gone from like being a perfect ballet of passing and ball movement had turned into just oftentimes just pure sloppy pass, so pure sloppy play. Draymond would make bad passes, Curry would make bad passes. You'd see weird plays where the ball would just go out of bounds. They would just the ball would go dribbling out of bounds. They cut down on that at the beginning of the year. That's starting to creep back up, but this team has clear weaknesses. There's no one on the roster who is a good paint scorer. And Curry can get to the hoop, but there's no, like, Trace Jackson Davis is a pure rim runner, and even that he's a 6'9" center. He's kind of a small on that end. He's not someone I'm going to throw the ball in the paint and be like, score. Honestly, the best paint scorer is probably Wiggins, and Wiggins is their small forward.
There's not a reliable volume scorer on this team other than Steph Curry, which means that while he is a good passer, the problem becomes like, I kind of don't need him to be the one passing. I need him to be the one receiving.
Yeah.
And so when Draymond's not on the floor, this roster, and this was true last year, this team does not work without Draymond on the floor.
It does not. And going back to the trade, Kuminga's playing 23 minutes a game, and Podziemski's playing 24 minutes a game, and they're untouchable. They are combining for 21 points in 48 minutes of play. That's not bad, but that's the production you expect from one player over 48 minutes, not two. And this is the same team that's been the case, last couple of years. They win, they'll go on streaks where they shoot well and they win some games, and they lose 5 in a row. Their defense doesn't look good. They get grumpy. None of the players are super happy to be there. It's a team that's very prone to drama, even with Draymond having cut down mostly on the insane fouls. He's had a couple of questionable ones this year, but no Cobra Kai, spinning back fists on Nurkic or anything like that.
So there's some nicks and stuff, like some nicks and bruises they're dealing with to Curry and Draymond. I expect that both of those guys will play in the NBA Cup. I think it goes without saying that if they're not playing, obviously that this isn't even a real game.
Yeah.
But let's assume that they're fully healthy. How do you think they actually match up against the Rockets?
Poorly. The problem with the Rockets against these older teams is the Rockets are incredibly. They play really fast. They are the most athletic team in the league, and they also have someone in the post who can abuse them down low in Şengün. And Şengün's problem is when you get big tall defenders against him, like he can sometimes struggle to finish. But Draymond Green is a great defender. Şengün is going to be able to see above him and score in the paint. I don't doubt that. And he's also
you're taking the Rockets hands down over the Warriors.
I think the Rockets are a better team right now. I think that they are. I mean, they're the number one team in the West, or number two. Just coming off being number one team. I think that this is a 15-point win by the Rockets. And
I first of all, I agree completely that the Rockets are a better team than the Warriors. For the sake of making this interesting, I will disagree with your pick. And what I will say is this. I do think I really like Şengün. I've liked Şengün for a while. If Draymond's on the floor, I can see Draymond being the type of defender who gives Şengün some problems. And really, my concern for the Rockets in this situation, if you put them in a series, I'm taking the Rockets every time.
Yes.
In a single game, you've got some streaky guys on the Rockets team, and you don't have anyone that you can. Steph Curry gets going for Golden State, that can be an avalanche that's really difficult to deal with. If Steph and Buddy Hield get going, they can put up some points. And when you look at the Rockets lineup, you could get a game like you got the other night from Van Vliet. I could also see the Warriors' defense frustrating him to no end. Because
I'm not relying on him. Yeah.
while the Warriors have significant problems, I think on the offensive end, they are a good team defense.
No, they have improved. Now, Kerr's masterclass, honestly, with the Olympics is having apparently zapped the powers of the remaining members of the U.S. national team, who all are having bad beginnings of the year. But like Curry's played well to begin. That they have a good team defense. Draymond, like they got smart younger defenders. That is one of the things they really upgraded with. And that by smart I mean Kyle Anderson looks like he should be a bad defender because he can't really move fast. He is actually a very, very good defender because he's smart, big, and knows how to use his size to just stay in front of someone and not get blown by. I think that the loss of DeAnthony Melton was a big one for them, but because he was an elite perimeter defender. But yeah. Moses Moody, good defender. Podziemski, one thing he is decent as defending.
He's a good defender. Yeah.
Looney is a good defender. I think Lindy Waters. Yeah. Yes. Really, I mean, the man's averaging 3.7 offensive rebounds in 15 minutes. That's like Moses Malone level production in terms of offensive rebounding. Kuminga's a decent defender, fouls too much. Moody's a good defender. Gary Payton Jr. Gary Payton II, is a good defender, even though they can insist on playing him at center. Like they have a bunch of guys they can rotate in and out, and they can all play like at high velocity. But
and part of the reason I think like that's the thing though. Like part of the reason I think that in a single game Golden State can win this is because it's good. They're good defenders and a good team defense. They move on a string. And you don't really have a lot of elite offensive players. You have guys like Jalen Green who have elite offensive potential, and you can get that on any given night. You've got people like Van Vliet who can get hot and give you 30, 40 points. But by and large, you don't have a lot of elite offensive players on this team. And I could see the Warriors team defense coupled with hot perimeter shooting from Curry and Buddy Hield. And, Draymond Green has been much improved from 3-point range this year, knocking down some timely corner threes, stuff like that. Once again, I would not take the Warriors over the Rockets in a series. But I will, particularly with a team that has sort of the character and the DNA of the Warriors in a single game, winner take all matchup. And for the sake of making our podcast slightly more interesting, I will take the Warriors over the Rockets.
All right. So let's put down the picks right now. So we got Riggs has got Mavs and Warriors.
I've got Mavs Warriors in the Western Conference Final for the NBA Cup.
Yeah, and I got Mavs Rockets. All right. So let's go over to the Eastern Conference side, which looks like, it looks like we took a playoff bracket from like the 2000 the late 90s, early 2000s. Like, I'm half expecting Tony Kukoc to make an appearance for the Bucks. After he was traded by the Bulls. But we got.
You don't want to see Dominique dunk on Patrick Ewing.
Dominique on Patrick Ewing. We got Big Dog, Glenn Robinson, making an appearance against Penny Hardaway. But we got the Orlando Magic, which it's a fun contrast in matchups. Orlando Magic, who struggle to score 16 points a game, but are able to hold their opponents to 6 a game, and thus pull off a string of victories without Paolo, versus maybe the single most team that's over leveraged on offense in the league in the Bucks. That team still, they've made some improvements, but they may be the worst defensive team player for player. I mean, they have two good defenders based on the entire roster, in the Bucks, and so I think it's a fun. This is going to be a fun contrast in styles. Who do you got in this one?
I'm going to take the Magic. Once again, it being a single game and Giannis being Giannis, that certainly could overwhelm the Magic. But in this particular instance, I feel a little bit more confident in my pick because I'm taking the Magic, expecting Giannis to be Giannis.
Yes.
I expect Giannis to get his. I expect Giannis to be dominant. I expect the Magic team defense. And they also have sort of a slew of big guys that they can kind of throw at Giannis and foul him and frustrate him and stuff like that. But really, where I'm focusing more is I expect the Magic's perimeter defense to give the rest the AJ Greens and Damian Lillard's some frustrating looks.
Yeah. I think that if you would have asked me at full strength with Paolo Banchero and Chris Middleton, just to make this fair, I would go the Magic. I think that they are the better team. I do think this is an interesting. We harped on the defensive inadequacies, put it that way, of the Bucks, but their real weakness is guards just basically tearing them to shreds. The Magic don't really have that right now, like this current version of that. Like if they give Cole Anthony some run, that could, that might be something you see oddly, even though he's been out of the rotation. But I'm not too worried about that. I do think that Suggs is going to make Lillard's life hell next week.
Well,
But
they got kind of like a slew of guys they're going to throw out.
oh
Anthony
yeah,
Black, you'll see a lot of.
but I also think that the Magic's offensive woes are such that I would love to see Doc Rivers just put Giannis on Franz full time and just have him, try to lock him up, like just basically make his life as miserable as possible. Because without him, that offense cannot generate looks for everyone else.
That's an interesting idea. I mean,
Yeah.
I definitely see what you're talking about.
Yeah, muck the game up. Try to, like you can't do this with Paolo because then you just leave Paolo to score it. But run that out there. I think that Giannis is one of the only players in the league I trust to have the stamina to do both and still remain great on offense. I think that they're very dependent on 3-point shooting right now. When they
So
shoot,
let me ask you one question about this strategy. So if I was Mosley and I saw that that's what they were doing, I would immediately tell every big I have on my team, we are playing physical. We're sending Giannis to the free throw line. We want him to burn 150 calories every time he touches the basketball.
Yep.
And honestly, I may have one of the best guys in the NBA for doing just that, in Mo Wagner.
But you see that cat play on Mo Wagner? That was the coldest thing.
Well,
thing he's ever done.
That was awesome. That was awesome. But like with Mo Wagner, like he's the kind of guy like you gotta like you tell him that in the team huddle, and as he's walking on the floor, you gotta like grab him and be like, hey, now I mean, don't do anything stupid.
Like, he's like, no, man, you just told me I could.
Yeah, you said.
You said I could fist fight him right now, right? Yeah.
Is it the Wagner brothers?
He's the only player I've ever seen get like punched in the back of the head, look like he's knocked out, come back, not be embarrassed that he got knocked out by an opponent, and come back and completely start talking smack again, completely unperturbed by the fact that he.
Well, you also have to be careful with Mo Wagner because Mo Wagner, the version of Mo Wagner I just described too, can be problematic because Mo Wagner's mouth will write checks his ass can't cash. Like just look at anytime I see the Mavs have the Magic on the schedule, that's must see TV for me. Luka
there's got to be something personal because he hates him more than he hates Rudy Gobert. Like he like Gobert, he just finds pathetic.
I don't even know that he hates Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
I just think that was the moment.
But
No,
Mo
like,
Wagner, he gets close to actually like squaring up at times.
no, I think Luka wakes up on Magic Day and his eyes just light up, and he's happy to get to reunite with Mosley and see him, and then he's thrilled to death that today is Wagner Day, and he gets to go at Mo Wagner.
I think this strategy works in an NCAA from the Bucks in an NCAA tournament style atmosphere, where I go to Giannis and I tell him the night before, we need you to be Superman. We need you to come tomorrow and go full Kobe. I want you completely dehydrated post game. I want to have to need an IV just to resuscitate you for so you can answer questions from the press.
Yeah.
And like play up to his hero.
And I agree with you completely about Giannis being one of the few guys in the league you can trust to do that.
Yeah, and
he's sort of like prime LeBron in that regard.
Yeah, and he's like prime LeBron and like prime Jordan. If you go to him and it's like, save us, Mister Giannis, save us. He's like, I got this. Like that. He
likes to put the cape on.
Yeah, he likes to put the cape on, exactly. So I would play that way. I think that they have a matchup advantage, weirdly enough, because they're defensive. They are really poor defensively, but they have really good defensive pieces in some positions. Lopez and Giannis are elite still. Lopez is one of the most. He and Mark Eaton, two players who never they cannot jump, and Lopez consistently averages 2.5 blocks a game. Because his positioning's so good. But this current version of the Magic isn't designed to exploit the giant cavern of issues that the Bucks perimeter defense causes. But the other big weakness that they need to work on, that they need to avoid a situation where Dame goes hero ball and takes 20 shots and goes 6 for 20 or 6 for 22, which he has a tendency sometimes to do. This is a thing where it's like, Giannis, I want you to take full-time defense and I want to get you 40 points. And I want this game to end up 98-87. That's what I would be going for. Just make their life hell, go all out. And so if you had to ask me, I'm taking the Bucks in a 98-93 victory over the Magic.
I'm taking the Magic in the exact same.
All right.
I mean, I think I agree with you about Dame. I'm not saying Dame's not capable of playing hero ball successfully. I am saying that this is not the matchup for him.
No, not at all. And so, I think it's going to be a fun game. I'm really excited. I think that, this is an episode for a later pod, but there is a strong chance, I think, that the two teams that end up in the NBA Eastern Conference Finals, depending on how the bracket turns out, is the Magic and the Celtics. I think that we could absolutely see that this year. Because I think the Magic with Paolo, this is the next. This team is up there as one of the next great team of the East in that discussion for sure.
Oh, I mean, depending on whether the next team we're about to talk about can turn it on.
So
they may already be kind of vaulted into that category. And the thing about Paolo is once he comes back, I don't think that it's going to be hard to plug him in because Paolo is not a player that's difficult to get off a ball. Like he likes to make it move. He likes to work in his teammates. So I think when he comes back, he'll fit in nicely. And he's clearly taken, at least up until when he got injured, he'd clearly taken a significant leap this year. So I'm real big on the Orlando Magic, and for this particular matchup, I think we're going to see Super Giannis. I just don't think it's going to be quite enough.
Now on to the next matchup, which features the Knicks against the most annoying team in the league, the Atlanta Hawks.
Are you calling them annoying? Are you just mad that the Atlanta Hawks are going to be a 5th or 6th seed in the East, and you're going to get a late draft pick?
I am annoyed because the one thing you count with the Hawks is being incompetent. They've had basically almost at this point half a century worth of incompetence. The only time you were ever good was with Bob Pettit, and that dude's like 105 years old. And right now,
LSU guy.
yeah, you didn't do any major move to trade away your second best player, and you guys somehow found yourself into the most balanced roster in the league, which is young, plays great defense, and everyone's bought in. Like, this is not the year to do this. That, like, 5 years from now, do whatever you want. But I need myself my top 6 guaranteed first round pick for the next 3 years.
Just for everybody who's listening in and wondering what the hell he's ranting about, he's a Spurs fan, and that DeJounte Murray trade is got some lingering value, some residual value for him that he's trying to cash in on. And
we own their first round pick for the next 3 years, and it was supposed to be a guaranteed. This is supposed to be our Nets. This is supposed to be our Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and like you were supposed to give us at least one high ranking pick, and now we're gonna get a bunch of top 20 picks, all of which are gonna suck, and we're gonna get 5 Romeo Langfords out of this, and this.
Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels, Trae Young, all those guys are robbing
DeAndre Hunter
of your
looks good.
future glory.
What the hell happened? Okay, he's never looked good. Like this. No, they're really frustrating to watch because they're supposed to be bad, but they're playing. they're actually a really well balanced team.
Yeah.
The real development this year is that Trae Young is no longer the best player on the team, but the best player is pretty clear at this point. Jalen Johnson, fantastic player, but this is a team. This is a balanced team that plays. The ball moves really well. There's not someone just hogging all the shots, which is kind of an issue last year where you would have Murray or Young shoot 30 to 40 times in a game. You got young, athletic, 6'8" guys that they have a bunch of them on the roster.
Yeah, you got good players coming off the bench.
He's Shai, their first round pick, the first overall pick. I mean, is he a future star in the making? No, but he looks like a really good 3-and-D player, like in the making.
Oh, he looks like a Cam Johnson in the making.
Yeah, he looks like a Cam Johnson in the making. That fits really well next to Jalen Johnson. Clint Capella is somehow still on this roster and is another one of those players who's been washed for like 2 years and is now no longer washed. Onyeka Okongwu, who I feel like has been talked about as the next great thing for the last like 7 years, and but is still only like 23 somehow. He's a very, very solid, backup big. This is a fun team to watch. I really I can't enjoy them because I'm just not allowed to legally. But when you just look at their roster, they're big. They're outside of Trae Young. They fill a lineup of Daniels, who's 6'8", Hunter, who's 6'9", Johnson, who's 6'9", Shai, who's 6'9". They have interesting young pieces, and Kobe Buffkin. Okongwu is still young. They're bringing back Bogdanovic, who I think may not be on this team much longer, not because he's bad, but because he just doesn't fit the timeline, and they can probably get a really good return for him. But no, this is a fun team. Now, I think they're on a bit of a run. They had this weird thing where they somehow have beaten the Cavaliers twice, even though the Cavs have only lost 3 times.
So to be clear, they've beat the Cavaliers, the Celtics. Who the Bucks?
They're better.
They've run the table against
the good. They have a better record against the good teams than the bad teams. So and part of that is sort of the egalitarian nature.
Well, that for the Atlanta fans, it's kind of interesting because what keeps them in these games is, and you've never said this about an Atlanta team, but like Dyson Daniels and their perimeter defense with him and Shai, Jalen Johnson's a good defender. Like, what keeps them in these games is their defense.
And defense, as anyone who's played basketball knows, defensive effort. Defense is different, but defensive effort is contagious. And a lot of their young players play so hard defensively. The older players,
maybe the Mavs. The Mavs went to South Beach and caught the South Beach flu. Yeah. Maybe the Lakers could go to Atlanta and catch the ATL flu because they have zero defensive effort.
Unfortunately, the Atlanta has its own nightlife scene that seems to perturb NBA players otherwise. But a lot of Magic City happening over there. But the bigger issue that this team faces, and I think why you see him play really well against other teams, but really well against the good teams and sort of worse against the bad teams, is that there's a little bit of small sample size luck happening. They are really they have 8 players who are averaging currently 10 points or more. So when they're all on, like if they get like a straight flush or they get 5 of the 8 that are playing at a high level, they're really hard to beat because they're young, they're fast, they can shoot, they can do everything. But if it's a game where 3 of your players are averaging 10 points a game or 4 of them just aren't on it today, like they do struggle sometimes to generate some offense.
Yeah, and my problem in this game is I like watching the Hawks. I like Dyson Daniels. I like Reese Shea. I like Jalen Johnson. I'll give more credit to Trae Young than you will. I think Trae Young's getting a lot of these guys some really good looks. And I also think that Trae Young. Once he gets in the paint, he becomes a lethal on ball player with that floater that he has, because and his ability to pass coupled with it, and I think he gets a lot of easy looks for the likes of Capella and Okongwu and people like that near the rim that way. But my problem for the Hawks this game is I could very easily see Dyson Daniels giving fits to Jalen Brunson. I could see Jalen Brunson really struggling in this game. I do not see where the Hawks match up well against Karl Anthony Towns.
That was what I was going to say. This is a game where Karl could have one of these 35 and 16.
Yeah,
yeah.
My thing with Karl Anthony Towns in this game is, if I'm the Hawks, I'm actually not going to put a big on Karl Anthony Towns if he's playing out along the perimeter. I'm going to put a quicker, strong, long, like a Jalen Johnson type on Karl Anthony Towns, have him play right up in Karl Anthony Towns' body and try to frustrate him and get him to start settling for 3-point shots rather than attacking the rim. Because I think if Karl Anthony Towns attacking the rim, I don't think the Atlanta Hawks have a chance.
No, I don't think so either. I also think that Brunson could have fits, but Brunson's also a really smart player. I think that there's going to be a lot. There's what you see in modern NBA constantly. He's going to get Dyson Daniels on them. He's going to call for a screen with Towns. He's going to switch on to whoever's guarding Trae Young's guarding. Have that try to get Trae Young and then basically go to work on Trae Young.
I agree with you completely. I think that what you're going to have to see from Atlanta is they're going to have to leave somebody open along the perimeter, and leave Capella near the rim to try to protect the rim.
Yeah.
And force very very similar to what Dallas did to Cat last year, where you just make it very 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 difficult for him to score at the rim.
Yep.
By forcing him to drive through a good on-ball defender and get to an elite rim protector. But if New York's knocking down their shots, it's going to be a long night for Atlanta. So I'm taking the Knicks in this one.
Excellent. The final thing I'll say is,
are you taking the Hawks?
No, fuck you, Hawks. Never. Like you can't even trust the Spurs to use a lottery pick if it's given to them. So you absolutely need 2 lottery picks per year. Otherwise, they're going to trade one away because they don't know how to draft. And so they're morally screwing us over. But in terms of the matchup, the Knicks have struggled on defense this year. But the one thing that they're designed to beat a Boston's type of team, a team with just a bunch of swingmen, like a bunch of like big threes, like 6'8", 6'9" threes. That's that's their build. They can throw Anunoby, they can throw Bridges, they can throw Hart. Like they have the defenders to match up size-wise with Atlanta, which is part of what Atlanta exploits, in that they can just field these very athletic long teams. And so I think that and their players are young enough. I do think that they're gonna they're just a bad matchup for Atlanta. But I say all this. Quinn Snyder, he got all the laurels in Utah for his job as a coach there. He struggled the first 2 years in Atlanta. This is clearly a Quinn Snyder type of team.
Yeah.
And the Hawk fans, I know you guys don't have really picks to build around this, but this is a solid core. This is a
Yeah.
real fun core, and like you could like
And you do have people like Bogey, like you mentioned earlier, that you can trade away and really
100%. No,
build on what you have.
you have Bogey. Even your veteran players aren't as old as you
Capella.
think. Capella's not as old as you think. Capella's
Yeah.
got 3 more good years in him in a little more limited
Yeah.
role.
Yeah.
So, no, like props to the Hawks. They can go fuck themselves, but it's a really like this is a really fun team, and like watching them pick apart the Bucks last night was really impressive.
Well, one of the things that's interesting about the NBA Cup, though, is like every other professional league in the world, front offices um, are engineering teams. Theoretically, Lakers may not be included in this, but they're engineering teams with the idea of winning a championship in mind. And to win a championship, you have
Do
to
you
go
think
through.
Bulls are engineering a team to win a championship?
Not right now. I
Yeah,
think they could be well positioned, years from now.
I get. Yeah, that's very fair. Yeah.
But I think I think the Lakers might be running more of a Dallas Cowboys style operation,
Yes.
with a less vocal Jerry Jones behind the scenes. But the idea is that you're engineering a roster that's meant to excel in a playoff series type situation where it's 5, 6, 7 games that you have to be able to win, or 4 games that you have to be able to win, 5, 6, 7 games you have to be able to compete in. But the NBA Cup puts you in an entirely different situation that's more college style, where it's one game.
Yep.
And we said this about every matchup, and it's what adds to the excitement of the NBA Cup to me. Yes, the NBA Cup imputes some meaning upon early season games that were once sort of devoid of meaning, and as a result, you just kind of watched, not intense basketball. We'll say that.
Yes.
And now there's more interest in the games as a result of the NBA Cup. But part of what makes the NBA Cup exciting too is that I think that the Rockets have engineered a roster that's designed to win a championship better than what the Golden State Warriors have right now. Also think the Golden State Warriors have a good team defense that on any given night, that defense augmented by the shooting of Steph and Buddy Hield could beat the Rockets. I think the Mavs are a better team than the Thunder, but the Thunder can get hot from three and win that game next week. I think that the Bucks and the Magic are kind of like the only matchup in that situation where I don't see a particular like single game advantage or series advantage for either team. Um, I think they're just kind of like an evenly matched team both ways, and it could go either way in either. Um, the Hawks Knicks, it's another one of those games, man. The Hawks have Trae Young, Shai, some of these guys get hot from three. Um, it could go against the Knicks, but that can also be said for I guess it goes both ways. That can be said for the Knicks. That can be said for the Mavs. That can be said for the Rockets as well.
No, I agree. I also think that it shows the real cool part about the cup right now, and I understand the point margin or whatever it's called thing where
The point differential, like
point differential
European
stuff.
soccer style point differential.
Yeah, that thing's kind of silly the way they designed it. Like I think if you want to use point differential, the only thing you can really use it for is as a playoff tiebreaker. Like I think that makes a lot of sense, but then that would be like you count it over the whole year. Like counting point differential over like a span of 4 games is kind of like goofy, especially when the rest of the year people have to use different and you see that because like you'll see like in the last possession of the game, one guy's like, "Oh yeah, this is an NBA Cup game. I have to go run and try to score." But and I do think it's a better tiebreaker than the current rules of the NBA, where it's like, well, since they both have the same division record, okay, now we're going to go to records on like when there was the 3 times of the year there was a full moon,
Yeah, well, and also, like most fans are like, wait, there are divisions.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah, and so but it gets kind of silly, so I would use it for that. But the ultimate evolution of this cup that I think is the way it's going to happen is they're just going to make this like it's gonna be like a NCAA tournament style where like literally you can create a bracket where all 30 teams get like played get a position at the beginning or middle of the year. They play each other, and then it's knockout until the final. That makes a lot more sense, and I think is a really exciting type of thing because right now, with the 4 games and with the way the point differential, you get situations where like a team wins 3 of 4, and they're somehow not making it to the knockout round, and that's because another team beat the Chicago Bulls by 75 points.
Well, I agree with you about the point differential. I think that the point differential works very well in soccer because a goal is much harder to come by, and so you don't have these huge swings where on any given night in an NBA game, the Mavs had like a 47 point differential in their group, like it was just massive, because they blew out a team. But like, it works in soccer. I do think they will end up reworking the point differential thing. Also think it kind of goes against like culture and norms of basketball to keep trying to score when you're up 30 with a minute left. And not just score, but like knock down threes.
Yeah.
Well, like you have situations too where it's also leads to sort of uncomfortable moments because coaches and players aren't used to it. And suddenly, like, you're down 30 and the defense expects you to just dribble out the clock and take the shot clock violation, but instead you bring a ball up the court and knock down a wide open transition 3 because nobody was defending you. So I do think they'll do something with the point differential. I don't think they'll get rid of the group stages. But what I do think will end up happening, and there's been some talk of this lately, is having to balance out this sort of, the power dynamics of the Eastern and Western Conference. I think what you're going to see, and Brian Windhorst has mentioned this, I think it was Windhorst, but when the expansion comes, I think they're going to do away with Eastern and Western conferences and just start having all the teams play each other an equal number of times.
That's a horrible idea.
And then they're just going to seed you league-wide based on where you rank in the entire league.
No, that's a fucking horrible idea. I don't want to see the Celtics play the Lakers in the first round of the playoffs. You know what I mean? Find this is the Eastern Western Conference makes sense. No other league, it makes sense to have conferences. It makes sense to have this issue. It balances out over time. There's some things which just it creates more drama. It creates a situation where it's going to create really fluky situations, like move teams between the conferences. That's a much better outcome, in my opinion, than doing that. Even out the conferences, move them around. But it's just going to look really silly to see Boston playing Dallas in the first round of the NBA playoffs some year or like that. And the problem with the in-season tournament and this tinkering is it's not even they basically did a college kid who forgot to write his essay, and so he just stole one from online. They stole it from from the Champions League in Europe. But the Champions League is a completely separate competition than the Premier League, and so that's why it makes sense. So they'll play their home league on weekends, and then Wednesday or Thursday.
Yeah, well, I mean the way the Champions League is structured, you got teams from La Liga competing against Champions League. They can't be regular season.
Yeah, but those are conference. They have a lottery that's picked in. So the idea that the way your system would probably work is either they just have one division like WNBA style where it's just literally a league table. But that's part of the problem is there's no allegiances to teams in the WNBA, which I think can be possibly associated with the fact that it's hard to create rivalry games. And because of the way that the playoffs are structured. But I think that the best system the system that I would prefer would be one where I still don't see the issue. Besides, I think it probably is a hassle scheduling wise. But start the season off with the tournament, with the in-season tournament. Start it off where you can have a bracket and just have the teams start the season off or mid-season, whenever you want to do it. And the teams by ranking last year or by use some college football playoff committees type of algorithm and committee of dudes who come out and rank the teams one by you'll get all the people angry about all this, but create a bracket to start the year and have and have them go like basically a knockout round one by one until there's, I think that generates interest. I think that, solves the issue of point differential. It also will extend this thing. You can have you can either do it all at once, you can extend it out. I think that there's some part of the oddness right now
Yeah, I
is
mean,
like random days that are NBA Cup games. Like you'll text me, it's like today's an NBA Cup game
yeah.
day. It's like,
Well,
oh
I mean,
really?
it happened earlier where we were talking
Yeah.
about the Warriors Rockets and like just getting it confused because like they happened to actually play the Rockets. The Warriors play the Rockets tonight, but it's
Yeah.
not the NBA Cup game that's coming up next week. And so like they're, and then, one of the other things the NBA's done that's kind of bizarre is you remember last year they kind of introduced these special courts.
Yeah.
So we would know that we're watching an NBA Cup game, which that works well. Like there needs to be something that sort of denotes that I'm watching an NBA Cup game. The court's just as good as anything. I guess maybe the
They make them
uniform
less
can be.
hideous though.
Yeah, some of them are great. Some of them are hard to look at. The Celtics court I wasn't a big fan of, and there's but here like some of these urine stained courts that we've had.
Yeah, why are they all urine stained? Like,
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't know. I don't know. Like
yeah.
they look like a massive dog just
Yeah,
lifted his leg in the middle of the
yeah.
court. But like, my problem is that they've introduced city edition courts this year. So like sometimes you're looking at these courts and you're like, oh, this must be an NBA Cup game. But lo and behold, it's not. It's just a city edition court. Like, dude, just have regular courts for regular games. I don't need the city edition court because it confuses me because then I think I'm watching an NBA Cup game and lo and behold, I'm not watching an NBA Cup game. And then now I've got to look for the trophy in the middle of the court to know this is an NBA Cup game. Like,
The decapitated basketball.
yeah,
Like,
but, but I mean, we can save the discussion of how the NBA should structure the conferences, whether they should get rid of them or not to, an off-season podcast. I see advantages and disadvantages to both. I'll say this: I do enjoy the NBA Cup. I like that we have this sort of early season competition. I do think it adds some fun, and the single game winner take all format of the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals adds some variance to basketball that you're not used to seeing because everything in basketball has some element of volume to it that allows things to balance out.
yes.
And I think that this allows teams to kind of punch above their weight sometimes. Um, the problem with that can be like last year, Indiana did it and then got to the final against the Lakers, and it wasn't a particularly competitive game.
But that's
And
a classic issue with these knockout tournaments
yeah,
because there's so
yeah,
like especially the larger they get, the more random variants you happen. I mean, like that happens every like NC tournament's famous for this. Where suddenly you get excited because you know Southern Duke Chapel, Westminster North Coast University randomly made it to the Sweet 16. They play Duke and they lose 75-24. Like
100%, 100%. Yeah, but all right, man. Well, this has been a good podcast. I look forward to meeting back up with you next week when the Mavs are playing the Golden State in the semifinals, and the Magic are playing Atlanta in the semifinals, and we can hash out our picks for the finals.
sounds good, man. All right,
All right, y'all have a good one.
all right, peace.